Hi, my name is Sue Campbell, and I'm going to be talking today about the miracle of reparenting, healing and reviving the child within. A little bit about myself. I have a PhD, and I'm a marriage and family therapist. I work with child development, parenting, and family relations. I've had a private practice for decades, and I am still running it. I taught at the college level when I was working on my PhD, developed a lot of the ideas, learned a lot of the ideas that I'm sharing today. I raised a family of my own. The solutions that I found support parenting, reparenting, and partnerships where developmental gaps require love to fill. The parent's job, we try to do a good job, and having good directions helps. What if we don't feel completed? What if we don't feel like ourselves? What if there's some missing pieces or love gaps in our own lives? Are we stuck? Is there any possibility of a miracle? Ta-da! Reparenting to the rescue. So reparenting means that we look at what a child needs at each age, and if we are missing any of those pieces, we create them for ourselves. And yes, it will feel like a miracle, because then we can move forward without so much baggage. In the presentation, we will look at each stage of development, summarize what the child needs, and then look at ourselves as adults and figure out what we might be missing and how to fill those love gaps, either by ourselves or with others. Here's the special note. If we can trust in God's help, we can find our own love gaps. So let God guide you in healing yourself through reparenting. What are you going to do that? You can read a book such as The Course in Miracles, which is going to be talked about throughout this conference, or you can read scriptures or other spiritual materials that can help you. You can pray or meditate to be able to feel Him. How does God speak to you? I believe that He speaks to you through your senses. You got 5 of them. He can speak to you in any way or just through your knowing. So you'll notice through your senses how He answers you. You may feel it in your heart or your understanding, your knowing. You may hear Him in your mind or even audibly. You may see an image. You may sense a gut feeling, just a sense. You may even smell or taste something that reminds you of a memory. Any of these lets you know He is there, loving and guiding you as your divine parent. Working on my PhD, I spent a lot of time with a psychologist, with the work of a psychologist by the name of Erik Erikson. So I'm basing my concepts on these theories that were provided by Erik Erikson. He identified 8 levels of development from infancy to old age. In this particular presentation, I am using his first 5, so infancy through adolescence. We'll discuss each stage and briefly what the child needs in order to complete the developmental task of that stage and the parent's role in each stage. This is a simple chart that shows you that. Because of the reparenting theme in this presentation, we will spend more time looking at what you as an adult might have missed and discuss the reparenting you can do by yourself or with a partner to fill any of these love gaps. This Erikson chart shows these stages of development with a simple phrase of what you can do as a parent. So you'll notice in the infant stage, the developmental task is to develop trust. If not, you'll have mistrust. And the parent's role for the child is to nurture. So each of these will be discussed, and I will go into them soon. So here we have the infant stage, trust versus mistrust. So how can he develop trust? Well, through nurturing, being fed, and this is your parent role, cuddled, comfortable, played with, given positive attention, allowed to sleep, free of discomfort. That means you burp him, you change his diaper, and he needs to feel and be safe. He also needs activity and connection. A child who is missing that nurture can develop mistrust. So what about adults who need to develop trust? How would you know? Well, you might feel depression or anxiety. Why? Because your infant's needs may not be met, or a trauma or neglect may have occurred in your life. And so at some point, you may have lost trust. So what can you do to reparent yourself? Well, first of all, you might ask, what do I need? Listen to yourself, trust yourself, meet your own needs. Self-nurturing, self-care, physical activity and connection, and don't overprogram yourself or push yourself too hard. Now, this doesn't mean that you just spend every day of your life in a spa or some kind of resort taking care of yourself. You got to have a life, but part of your life needs to be taking care of yourself. So you need to be able to trust yourself in order to be able to trust others. This is showing a lot of trust here. We usually don't quite do this much, but you could. Listening to yourself may also caution you against trusting those who are untrustworthy. In other words, staying safe. There are people in your life who do not deserve your trust. So being trusting doesn't mean that you are trusting everyone. You do certainly need to use caution and use your wisdom. Allow God to guide you and allow yourself to trust God. Now we're at the toddler stage, helping the child develop autonomy. So autonomy means doing things by themselves, becoming a little more their own person, okay? So to do that, we're going to allow the child reasonable choices. If you're going to allow the child a choice, allow them two choices, both of which you like. Because if you don't like one of them, they should choose that one. That's not going to work. So, you can either walk to bed or I can carry you to bed. Or you can either have you can either eat the food on this side of your plate or this side of the plate. Make them so it sounds like they have a choice, and they do, but they don't have to worry about making the wrong choice. Help the child to begin to use skills to be able to do things for himself, to dress, to eat, etc. Do not shame or force the child. So what about adults who lack autonomy? Well, they're going to be dependent on others, people pleasers, or they do too much for others. We need to find ways to help ourselves to succeed and do things for ourselves. You got to carry your own stuff, not other people's stuff, and not having them carry yours. So the fix, carry your own backpack. So I want you to look at your own responsibilities. If you've got a piece of paper, maybe you can write these down. First of all, what's in your backpack? Are you carrying your own stuff? Do you have your own responsibilities in your backpack? So list anything that should be in your backpack. Let me do that real quick. Things like your responsibilities at your home, at your work, your family responsibilities. Now, are you carrying anybody else's stuff in your backpack? Think about that. Are you still taking care of your teenage or young adult boy? Are you having to get him up in the morning to go to work? Are you having to fix lunch for an adult who is capable of fixing their own lunch? Are you carrying around someone else's emotions in your backpack that they need to have back? So you need to find a way to give those back to the rightful owner. Allow God to assist you in developing autonomy. I love this picture. Moving on. Preschool children, these are kids that are maybe 2.5 to 5 years old. Their developmental task is to develop initiative rather than guilt. Your role as a parent is to encourage your child's creativity, help them have make-believe play, a sense of ambition and responsibility to experiment with the kind of person they can become, having empty boxes, papers, crayons, paints, things outside that they can do, playing out in a forest or a yard. It's important that parents do not demand too much self-control, which could lead to more over-control or too much guilt. And these preschool kids still need to be safe, so always watch for that. What if you're an adult who lacks creativity or initiative? So maybe you're unable to play or to encourage your children to play. Maybe you're too serious, too task-oriented. There was a woman that I counseled. This particular woman had never been able to be a child. At 4 years old, her mother became ill. And so that at the age of 4 or 5, she had to take care of her mother's responsibilities. There was a younger sister and then a baby. So she was cooking, cleaning, changing and feeding the baby. She always was very responsible, but she was not able to relax and enjoy life. Her husband offered to help her reparent. So we were using this concept in our therapy, and he was trying to help her find a way to reparent herself, and he wanted to be a part of that. He got a babysitter, and they took her to a park one evening. He pushed her on a swing and on a merry-go-round, and then they sat on the lawn and had a picnic. She laughed and enjoyed herself for the first time because she was allowed to. She was giving herself permission. And here we have her doing that. She was able to play with her children a lot more. She was able to feel like she was a child sometimes when she was with her children. And I suggest that we do that sometimes. So we just kind of be a kid with them. We still have to be responsible, but part of us can be that kid. So use God's help in developing your creativity. And he loves you, and he will comfort and guide you. Now we're working with the school-age child. So this is age kindergarten to probably 6th grade, 5th or 6th grade, okay? So what does the child need, the school child need to develop industry? He has to develop the capacity to work and cooperate with others. He needs to learn skills, reading, writing, math, history, science, etc. Do you see your parent role here helping with the skills? He needs to develop a good work ethic, planning, beginning, completing, and turning in work. You know, the hardest thing for some kids is to turn in the work after they get it done. So they may have to be helped to organize. They need to be responsible. They need to organize their own stuff and take care of belongings and keep the rules. Parents need to avoid negative experiences such as disrespecting the child, putting him down, giving him bad labels, or making him feel inferior, because that's where that inferiority can come from. What about adults who develop inferiority? Well, they might be missing some skills. They may be unable to hold a job, lacking basic life skills or scholastic skills, life and belongings unorganized, difficulty working with others, no motivation to improve. I worked with some kids as a substitute teacher, and I noticed that this one couple of guys were, they just never seemed to get anything done. But one day, one of the guys was gone, and the other one was there in class. One of the students came to class, and I got more involved with him because his friend wasn't there to bug him. I was able to get him to pass out some papers, and then I gave him a quick summary of what we were doing, and then I said, okay, if you've got any questions, please ask them. It worked well with him. But if adults don't learn that, so what he was able to do is move from industry into the next stage. We sometimes have to move from industry into the next stage. So what can we do to reparent ourselves? Well, we need to recognize and evaluate any missing skills we have. Did we not get something done in elementary school that we should have? We need to make a plan to obtain those skills. That might mean taking classes to learn academics or improve and develop skills, work with a counselor, a mentor, a job coach, a vocational rehabilitation counselor. They are great, by the way. I worked a lot with them. To find a passion and develop industry. So I'd like to give you an example. There was one family that seemed to lack some industry. The house was really messy. It was really stinky because they had dogs. And it was good people. They're really good, sweet people, but they just realized that they were living in a really difficult home. They wanted to make it look better. They wished someone would just do it for them. They knew they couldn't afford to hire a contractor, but they were able to get a small loan and did some research on what they could do themselves. They began to remove the worn carpet and flooring at one end of the house, They used a cleaning product to remove the odors. They repaired walls and repainted as they needed. They put in new flooring. The children, teens, and some of their friends pitched in to help. Many long hours were spent, but the project took on a feeling of group ownership. When it was finally finished months later, the entire family noticed that they all felt better and became very protective of their upgraded home. They also realized how good it felt to solve a problem themselves rather than to be rescued. We look at a lot of people today who think they should be rescued. Those are people our missing industry. I watched some self-direction and some self-esteem grow for all of them throughout that experience. It was an exhausting but very bonding experience for them to do as a family. Another example, a relative of mine didn't put much effort into school. He did like science and he was bright but bored. His science teacher took an interest in him and mentored him along, encouraging him to graduate. He suggested that since the students' grades were low, he attend a small college. While there, he became excited about learning and was able to earn an associate degree. And then he went on to earn a bachelor's degree at another college and graduated with honors. He received a presidential scholarship from Brigham Young University. There he pursued biochemistry, completing his PhD. He then did postdoctoral work at University of California at Davis. Since then, he has gone on to become a renowned genetic researcher and has amazed all of us, including my sister, who's married to him. As a genetic engineer, he was able to develop high-protein potatoes and rice. He also developed peptides to fight diseases in plants and animals. One was a cancer-fighting peptide that destroyed cancer cells and nurtured healthy cells. You never know what you can do if you don't get out and do it. So are you missing any skills in your life? Let God help you with this miracle. It's never too late to learn something new. Now, the last stage we'll be talking about today is the adolescent stage. Parents have a role. We need to give kids an opportunity to explore life possibilities openly, but safely, so they can learn about themselves and find their ultimate path. My professor, who I learned all this from, suggested finding a mentor in an area that the kid has an interest in and have them learn from that mentor, either by following, by shadowing them, by working for them, by doing an internship or whatever they could. They need to feel loved and cared about. They need to experience natural consequences for their behaviors. If we enable them, if we, go in and grab them, take them out of the bad place, other than the fact that if they are truly in danger, we need to do that. But if they are just having a hard time because of their consequences, let them experience them. They need to continue learning those needed skills for life that they started in elementary school. They need to learn to be good citizens and good family members. They need to become ready to step into adulthood. Parents need to avoid forcing the child or making decisions for them or disrespecting them. What about adults who lack or lose identity? Indications: they're lost. They live in their parents' basement playing video games. They have no passion for life or work, no progress. They feel a need for a major change in life. And this is sometimes where a midlife identity crisis occurs. What can the parent do to reparent themselves? You got to ask yourself, who am I? First of all, you've got to find your passion. What have you always wanted to do? What kind of career would be exciting for you? Then you're going to research to find out what it would take to have that career. You can seek help through a mentor, like my professor suggested, a trusted friend or relative, a therapist, vocational rehabilitation counselor, religious leader, or whatever to design your future. In any of these cases, if you have had a lot of trauma in your life, you may need to spend some time with a therapist to get that resolved so you can move forward. Ask God how he sees you. So another example, we have a friend who had grown up working for a dairy farm. He had been employed by this dairy farm until he was 35 years old. On his 35th birthday, he was milking a cow. And the inspiration came to his mind that he needed something different and more fulfilling in his life. He needed to be able to support his family better. He had raised bees along with his cows, and so he enrolled in a college at Utah State University and began taking classes. For the next 9 years, he was in college and graduated with a PhD in entomology. His focus was in bees, and his research was groundbreaking, giving new information in working with bee cultures. From the Course in Miracles, in a section at the very back called the Song of Prayer, it says, and I think this is the last phrase in the book, remember this, whatever you may think about yourself, whatever you may think about the world, your Father needs you and will call to you until you can come to him in peace at last. And I do have a book that will be coming out. It's called Love Gaps for Parents. It's never too late to lovingly parent and reparent. I've enjoyed talking with you today. Have a good life.